Andrew Kraft here, also joining us on News Now from Fox for this political rundown. But one of the big headlines today, Andrew, are these storms that continue to pop up. You can see some people out there in Times Square kind of walking around, but it has been a flurry today.
Yeah, that's right, Daytona. All up and down the East Coast. You know, this started kind of more southern and like near the District of Columbia and Maryland, Virginia, then it made its way a little further up north, Pennsylvania, to Boston, to New York, and they're just getting pummeled right now with snow. Oh, you can see right there, I believe that's right outside Philadelphia's City Hall, right in Old Town there in the city of brotherly love. The roads look slick. I don't know how much inch-wise has been coming down, but we showed you live reports from some of our reporters in the field, and the conditions were quite bad a couple hours ago. There you see 6th Avenue in New York City, right across the street from Fox News World headquarters. There's nothing better, though, than a New York City snowstorm. The city is really beautiful with all the lights lit up, especially around the holiday season. I know I miss it, but this is the season's first major snowstorm. We call them nor'easters. They're these huge storm fronts, 1,000 miles, in length. This started, from North Carolina up to Massachusetts, and there you're seeing a wintry street scene as well. So remains to be seen, how Northeasterners are faring in this. A lot of them obviously are working from home still. You have those essential workers who do have to, commute to work and use public transit. But obviously, travel on the streets during this snowstorm, not as much as it normally would be pre-pandemic.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we're talking storms, but we're also talking lack there of storm, kind of just complacency at this point with this COVID-19 stimulus. I wish there was more of a storm effort to get this through, but we're watching it. We're watching it, Andrew.
That's right, yeah. I think the appropriate term might be stalemate at this point for the last few months, especially this week. But there have been moments of progress and kind of openings of dialogue and agreement. So you're seeing that within these last few days and few hours from today. So we are on the brink of a deal. It could come later tonight. It could come tomorrow. Earlier this morning, we were hearing it could come sometime today. Obviously, it has not happened yet, but they're still negotiating on what's going to be included, what's not going to be included, and that dollar amount. As far as we know right now, there has been some agreement on that dollar figure, and it's looking like it's going to be $900 billion in total. So we wanted to bring you a live report on the latest from COVID relief negotiations on Capitol Hill. We're going to listen now to one of our Fox News correspondents, Ray Bogan.
I think it is in the oven being baked as we speak, and I hope it comes out soon.
It smells like money in the congressional kitchen. Lawmakers are mixing together the final ingredients for what could ultimately be a $2.3 trillion pie. A little more than $900 billion for coronavirus relief and $1.4 trillion for 2021 government spending.
We agreed we will not leave town until we've made law. The American people need more help. It's that simple.
The relief will include $300 billion for small businesses and the Paycheck Protection Program, tens of billions for food and rental assistance, and an extra $300 a week in unemployment benefits. They're still trying to work out how much money to give in direct payments to Americans, if anything. That could mean convincing lawmakers to reduce the check amount from $1,200 to $600.
I think there ought to be direct payments, stimulus checks, because the American people are still struggling.
I think it should be $1,200. I think we should do at least what we did in the CARES Act.
Democrats are now accepting multiple offers they've previously denied because they said it wasn't enough. The reason? President-elect Joe Biden is promising another package when he takes office.
But it's a down payment, an important down payment.
The Federal Reserve is also trying to boost the economy by announcing interest rates will remain near zero and they'll likely stay there until 2023. Ray Bogan, Fox News.
So obviously the very latest on COVID-19 relief, that 600 number seems to be pretty stable right now. But Andrew, I want to bring up the fact that another temporary spending bill also needs to be passed by Friday at midnight, right? Or else the government shuts down.
That's right, and you saw that pie there in Ray's story, that $1.4 trillion to fund the government through next year. So they need to do this as well. Remember, these are happening on parallel tracks. They need to fund the government before funding runs out, which essentially would cause a government shutdown and do the coronavirus relief. So legislators have a lot on their plate before Christmas and before the end of the year. So you saw Lindsey Graham there saying that it's in the oven, it's being worked on. So we'll see if it comes either tomorrow or later this week.
All right, perfect. And someone who's probably keeping their eyes on the COVID-19 relief is President-elect Biden himself. What is the latest from Biden and his team that we are seeing today?
Well, that's right. He had the big rollout today of one of his top administration picks, Pete Buttigieg, who he has chosen to lead the Department of Transportation in his administration. We're going to play that full event out for you later here on NewsNOW from Fox. It happened earlier, but just in case you missed it, we'll play it out again. But there's a lot of Biden news as well. We're still waiting on a lot of these department picks. We've been hearing reports he's whittling down his picks for Interior Secretary, also for Attorney General. We're still getting some more reports on what's happening with this investigation into his son Hunter's tax issues by the U.S. Attorney there in Delaware. So we'll be all looking out for that this week as well. But we want to take it out now to Fox News' Peter Doocy, who has all the latest happening in the Biden transition from today.
The president-elect tells Fox News the federal investigation into the future first son will work out okay.
Are you confident your son Hunter did nothing wrong?
I'm confident.
That's even though he's long claimed not to know how his son operates.
How many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
More recently, the president-elect has been staying out of congressional negotiations about COVID relief, but he's planning more help as president next month.
It's a down payment.
Talks with Republicans could be awkward, since the incoming Deputy White House Chief of Staff is describing them with a word that can't be said on TV. Jen O'Malley Dillon tells Glamour this about Biden, quote, "In the primary, people would mock him like, you think you can work with Republicans? I'm not saying they're not a bunch of F words. Mitch McConnell is terrible, but this sense that you couldn't wish for that, you couldn't wish for this bipartisan deal, he rejected that." As the Biden cabinet fills out, progressives are pleased with all the diversity, but
equally important, or more important, is having a cabinet that stands up and fights for working people.
Today, Biden brought aboard a millennial to run the transportation department, who will also be the first openly gay nominee ever sent to the Senate for confirmation, Pete Buttigieg.
The Harris-Biden cabinet is first among cabinets of all the first it represents.
Lots of new faces in Wilmington lately, and Biden is still getting a hang of names for his team and their spouses.
Jill and I have always enjoyed seeing Pete and Chasten, I should say, together on the trail.
And Buttigieg is already trying to stand out in front of the new boss, alluding to his love of Amtrak.
Well, I know that in this administration, I will at best aspire to be the second biggest train enthusiast around.
Art enthusiasts will soon be able to see the brushstrokes of Hunter Biden. Page 6 is reporting that next year, a gallery in New York will display Hunter's work at an art show. We are waiting to hear back from that gallery to see if Hunter is, in fact, now out of the Ukrainian oil business and into the oil painting business. In Wilmington, Delaware, Peter Doocy, Fox News.
Well, there you have it. That was quite the story encompassing everything that's going on in Biden's life. I mean, we'll talk in a moment about him getting the vaccine, but, what do you think about all this that's coming down about Hunter, his son? He's getting a lot of backlash on this.
Yeah, he is, and Peter has done such a great job of really asking him any chance he can get to respond to these allegations. Biden does respond, not substantively very much, just saying that he's either very proud of his son or what have you. So we haven't gotten much substantive or constructive responses from Joe Biden about what he knew about his son's business dealings, or if he knew about them at all. So I thought that was interesting there as well. Jen O'Malley Dillon's comments in that profile of her in Glamour magazine. Remember, like Peter said, Biden was always kind of seen as naive and old school, if you will, through the primary process. That he's gonna work with Republicans. He's gonna restore bipartisanship. Remember Daytona? I covered the Democratic primary. There was even one point where he mused and even offered the suggestion that he might have picked a Republican vice president if he was the nominee. And so you're seeing those comments from Jen O'Malley Dillon there saying, essentially using that expletive in saying how the president-elect wants to work with the other side of the aisle. And like Peter said, Jen O'Malley Dillon will be the next deputy chief of staff. So.
Sure. And again, the latest update from his cabinet picks being Buttigieg himself. Moving over to COVID-19 vaccines, though, speaking of the president-elect and vice president-elect Kamala Harris, they're announcing that they're going to receive the COVID-19 vaccine, quote, as soon as next week. But they're not the only ones. Vice President Mike Pence said that he will publicly receive the vaccine also on Friday. So we're starting to see some of these politicians actually come forward getting the vaccine. So far, it's just been frontline workers.
That's right, Daytona. And also the second lady, Mike Pence's wife, Karen, will be getting it, as well as the Surgeon General, Jerome Adams, and that will be apparently televised live on Friday, that they'll be taking the Pfizer vaccine. So we'll bring that to you here if we have it on News Now from Fox. And remember, we've been kind of following all of these developments on who are going to be the bigwigs getting the first shots of the vaccine as it has been rolled out. Remember, there was that report over the weekend that the Trump administration and essential staff and administration officials were going to be first in line. President Trump had to come out and tweet that he didn't really think that was fair, that they'll get it in due time after the appropriate people who are first in line will be getting it. So it remains to be seen when exactly President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump will be getting the vaccine at all. But we also have that news there reported by Fox's Jackie Heinrich that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden will be getting the vaccine as soon as next week. So we'll be bringing all of these events to you live here on News Now. And remember, Daytona, just about a couple weeks before the vaccine was even approved, you had former Presidents Obama, Clinton, and Bush saying that they would publicly get the vaccines as well in some kind of live televised format, either separately or jointly. So we'll be looking out for that too.
Yeah, and Dr. Fauci himself is recommending that President Trump and First Lady get it as well. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see all of these live feeds coming in of former presidents and sitting presidents getting the vaccine eventually. Like I said, we brought to you from several states a lot of these healthcare workers getting it, and it seems pretty easy. They don't even budge most of the time. All right, so we're going to stay kind of at the Capitol, I guess you could say, and talk about some of these election hearings that are going on at the Senate. Andrew, I find it interesting. We haven't seen it hit the Senate quite yet. These election fraud, I guess, allegations that are coming forward. It was heard today, right?
Yeah. So essentially, the Senate wanted to hold a hearing, essentially to kind of, look further into any, they use the term irregularities, they didn't use the term fraud, that happened during the election. Remember, this is not anything like a court proceeding. This is just a Senate panel, a Senate hearing. They call witnesses. Obviously, they're under oath. They can't lie under oath. They have to testify truthfully. But they brought in witnesses who could either, counteract or verify or defend some of these claims. One of those witnesses was the former director of CISA, which is the cybersecurity agency that's tasked with protecting the nation's cyber infrastructure, especially from foreign actors that want to hack in, especially into election systems. Remember, the president fired him over a tweet because he was adamant in saying the election was safe and secure, the most it's ever been safe and secure in election history, this 2020 election that was. So he testified today. It got very, very heated among senators. Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, the Republican, led the hearing, but he really went back and forth with the witnesses as well as fellow members on the panel. We do have a live, or excuse me, not a live report, but a story from Fox's own Kristen Fisher, who's going to break that story down and what happened on Capitol Hill today.
There was fraud in this election. I don't have any doubt about that. There was fraud. We just don't know the extent.
Republican Chairman Ron Johnson defending his decision to hold today's hearing on examining irregularities in the 2020 election.
The question that follows is whether the level of fraud would alter the outcome of the election.
The top Democrat on the committee called the hearing dangerous. Senator Gary Peters accused Republicans of giving oxygen to claims that have been repeatedly tossed out in court, noting the 50 lawsuits that the president and his allies have lost since November 3rd.
Whether intended or not, this hearing gives a platform to conspiracy theories and lies. And it's a destructive exercise that has no place in the United States Senate.
So help you God. I did.
On the witness stand, the Trump administration's former top election security official, Christopher Krebs, who said today that he stands by the statement that got him fired by the president, calling the 2020 election the most secure in history.
I think we're past the point where we need to be having conversations about the outcome of this election. The trick about elections is that, you're not so much trying to convince the winner they won, it's the loser that they lost.
If he had not been fired, Krebs would have been at the center of the government's ongoing response to the suspected Russian cyber attack on at least 5 U.S. agencies. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency issued an emergency directive on Sunday, ordering all federal civilian agencies to disconnect or power down SolarWinds Orion products immediately. That is the network management software that is believed to have been compromised by hackers close to the Kremlin. The breach is bad enough that National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien cut short a trip to Europe to lead a meeting of the National Security Council this morning.
We are taking a hard look on this and obviously take any sort of cyber hacks very seriously.
And the full scope of this highly sophisticated attack could take years to assess. The State Department, the Department of Homeland Security, and parts of the Pentagon have all been compromised. At the White House, Kristen Fisher, Fox News.
So interesting right there, this attack coming possibly because there was so much focus on the election and possible attacks coming from other countries as well within that. But yeah, this hearing was a big deal today with senators actually sitting down and hearing testimonies from people. And Chris Krebs making an appearance as well for the first time since I believe he was fired. So.
That's right, and we'll play some of that hearing out for our viewers later on NewsNOW. It was quite a lengthy hearing, but we're going to play some of the highlights later tonight for you as well. We did want to move over to the latest going on in the Georgia runoffs there for the Senate. But first, we want to give you kind of a report that was happening, or some remarks from the Secretary of State in Georgia, who is saying, Brad Raffensperger, that a statewide signature match audit will be conducted. The state and a research team from the University of Georgia will work together on the audit. Raffensperger says it's happening because of what he says is a tsunami of disinformation. In Daytona, remember, the president has been tweeting about these signature verification audits for, as long as we've been at post-election. He's been tweeting about them. Saying that it wasn't done and it needs to be done again. The fact is it has been done twice, and so they're doing it again, verifying those signatures on the ballot in conjunction with the University of Georgia. We have some comments and sound bites from Raffensperger himself. We just want to play that for you right now.
So unfortunately, it doesn't look like we have those sound bites, Andrew, but this is Brad Raffensperger, obviously, speaking earlier today, talking about those audits that are going to be going on. And we're going to play that event out for everyone here on News Now from Fox after we're done hitting these headlines. But you know, we hear from him almost every single day. It's amazing how forward these Georgia officials have been, election officials have been, giving press releases every hour, doing at least 1 to 2 press conferences a day. So they have been extremely transparent through the election itself, and then now for the Senate runoffs as well.
Yeah, and that's right. The Senate runoffs obviously will be held January 5th. Early voting started on Monday. We do have some video of one of the candidates, Senator Kelly Loeffler, who went and voted early today. There she is, casting her ballot in Georgia. I believe she made a few remarks to reporters waiting outside. She was asked repeatedly if she would recognize Joe Biden as president-elect. I believe from the comments that I saw, she ducked those questions, but here she is casting her ballot early.
And early voting just started this week, so we've seen rallies throughout the state of Georgia on both sides of the aisle, and we will likely continue to see that, and just millions and millions of dollars invested in the Senate runoff race, as it's going to decide a lot for the future.
That's right. I believe Vice President Mike Pence will be there at the end of the week or Saturday, I believe. He has been there several times, very, very often. Here we have comments from her, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not sure we have any sound on that, Andrew, but we'll probably be seeing the other candidates come forward this week as well and cast their votes, too.
Yeah, that's right. But moving on, we just wanted to kind of break up all this politics news with something that's heading to the Supreme Court. And we're going to hopefully talk to some of the key players and experts involved in this case, possibly tomorrow on News Now from Fox. But we wanted to just put this on your radar. You know, this has been a big issue with college athletes and letting them get paid for the work as athletes on the field, even though they are students still. So this is heading to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so here we go, Andrew. The Supreme Court is agreeing to consider whether the NCAA has violated federal antitrust law with its efforts to keep tight limits on paying college athletes. Yeah, this has been going on for years. In court, in a brief written order, though, they said it would hear the NCAA's appeal of lower court rulings that found the association unlawfully limited competition for college athletes by adopting a restricted view of the kinds of compensation that the athletes could receive related to their education. Those rulings did allow college athletes to receive a range of education-related benefits, such as laptops or, musical instruments, study abroad programs, internships, and paid for graduate school. The rulings didn't lift NCAA limits on athlete compensation unrelated to education. So the Supreme Court is likely to hear these arguments in the spring, with a decision expected by the end of June. And other parts of these rulings have also brought up the fact that, these athletes are playing and people are making money off their likeness too. So there's lots to talk about, as of course the NCAA has kind of hit a roadblock for the pandemic, had to shut down a lot of games. Everything has looked very different this year. So athletes are struggling at this point in time. Unfortunately, this could be a light at the end of the tunnel for them. They could ultimately get paid for doing what they do best.
That's right, and that's all the stories we have for you today. We're going to go over now to Daytona. Did a great interview earlier today. We showed it to you here on News Now from Fox with a scientist who has taken to social media to combat efforts against vaccine misinformation. He's going viral. He's blowing up on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. He has millions of views for his videos, basically explaining, here's how to look for misinformation and how to combat it regarding the virus and the vaccine. Daytona.
Yeah, no, such an interesting conversation because everyone is on their phones more than ever at this point in time and seeking information. I found it really interesting. I asked him, why he got into it, and he said in the beginning, people just wanted anything they could find about the coronavirus. We all really didn't know that much about it in the beginning. And so he absolutely blew up because there was such a need for it. And now he sees it fluctuating, but with the vaccine coming out, people have questions now. And there's a lot of theories swirling around about if the vaccine is safe or not. And he debunks those theories in a really witty, yet professional way, bringing science to the table. I call him the new age Bill Nye the Science Guy. So a cool conversation for sure in a time where it's so serious. He takes a topic that is stressful and makes it informational.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to play that out. We want to thank everyone for watching this rundown of the day's top stories. I'm Andrew Kraft, joined by Daytona Everett. Give us a follow on our